Types of sources of finance include internal and external sources available to businesses. Internal finance refers to money generated from within the business's own operations. Different sources of internal finance include retained profit, net current assets, and sale of assets. Retained profit is the surplus income a business keeps after all expenses and dividends are paid. Short-term and long-term advantages of retained profit include immediate access to funds without interest payments and support for sustainable growth over time. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of retained profit include limited dividends to shareholders and restricted external investment opportunities. Net current assets represent the difference between current assets and current liabilities, showing liquidity available for day-to-day operations. Short-term and long-term advantages of net current assets include improved immediate cash flow and long-term financial stability. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of net current assets include the need to reduce stock levels and the potential for damaged supplier relationships if liabilities are delayed. Sale of assets involves selling unwanted or unused items owned by the business to raise finance. Short-term and long-term advantages of sale of assets include quick access to cash and reduced maintenance costs over time. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of sale of assets include reduced operational capacity and the potential loss of valuable resources. External finance refers to money sourced from outside the business through individuals, institutions, or organizations rather than generated internally. Different sources of external finance include owner's capital, loans, crowdfunding, mortgages, venture capital, debt factoring, hire purchase, leasing, trade credit, grants, donations, peer-to-peer lending, and invoice discounting. Owner's capital refers to personal money invested by the owner into the business. Short-term and long-term advantages of owner's capital include immediate control without interest and strengthened equity over time. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of owner's capital include reduced personal savings and increased personal financial risk. Loans involve borrowed sums from banks or financial institutions that must be repaid with interest. Short-term and long-term advantages of loans include quick access to large funds and structured repayments over time. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of loans include regular interest payments and increased financial liabilities. Crowdfunding is the process of raising finance from a large number of individuals who each contribute small amounts. Short-term and long-term advantages of crowdfunding include immediate access to capital without interest and the creation of a supportive community for long-term growth. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of crowdfunding include the risk of failing to reach funding targets and potential damage to reputation if expectations are not met. Mortgages are long-term loans secured against property. Short-term and long-term advantages of mortgages include access to large sums of finance and lower interest rates over time. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of mortgages include the need for a deposit and the risk of asset repossession. Venture capital involves investment from individuals or firms in exchange for equity in the business. Short-term and long-term advantages of venture capital include access to expert guidance and funding and support for business expansion. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of venture capital include loss of ownership control and dilution of profits. Debt factoring involves selling unpaid invoices to a third party for immediate cash. Short-term and long-term advantages of debt factoring include improved cash flow and reduced risk of bad debts. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of debt factoring include reduced income due to fees and weakened customer relationships. Hire purchase is a method of acquiring assets through installment payments over time. Short-term and long-term advantages of hire purchase include immediate use of assets and the ability to spread costs. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of hire purchase include regular payment obligations and higher overall cost due to interest. Leasing involves renting an asset for a set period without ownership. Short-term and long-term advantages of leasing include access to assets without upfront costs and the ability to upgrade regularly. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of leasing include ongoing rental expenses and the absence of asset ownership. Trade credit allows a business to receive goods or services and pay for them at a later date. Short-term and long-term advantages of trade credit include improved short-term cash flow and stronger supplier relationships over time. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of trade credit include penalties for late payment and reduced creditworthiness. Grants are funds provided by governments or organizations that do not require repayment. Short-term and long-term advantages of grants include access to free finance and long-term support for development. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of grants include time-consuming applications and strict conditions on use. Donations are voluntary contributions made to support a business or cause. Short-term and long-term advantages of donations include immediate funds without repayment and improved public image over time. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of donations include unpredictability in income and lack of sustainability. Peer-to-peer lending involves borrowing money directly from individuals through online platforms. Short-term and long-term advantages of peer-to-peer lending include quick access to finance and potentially lower interest rates. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of peer-to-peer lending include platform fees and the risk of lenders withdrawing support. Invoice discounting uses unpaid invoices as security to access a percentage of their value as immediate finance. Short-term and long-term advantages of invoice discounting include improved cash flow and retention of customer relationships. Short-term and long-term disadvantages of invoice discounting include service charges and increased financial commitments over time. Thank you for watching this video on different sources of business finance. I'll see you in the next one.